Hi there, everybody. I am Matt with K15T. Welcome to the live stream. Today we are going to talk all about how to share your Confluence content and documentation securely, because there are lots of options available to us, and some of them are quick, but each of them come with their own security concerns. This topic came up from our last few live streams. Hey, Ada, nice to see you in the chat. By the way, this is a live stream, so please jump in the chat. We'd love to see your questions and thoughts. If you do have a question, maybe just if you use that little hashtag, just say hashtag question and then type it in. That helps me because I'm scanning through to see if y'all have any questions for us as we go through. We just recently did a live stream about guest access in Spaces. We talked a little bit about some of the other options, but realized like, oh, there's kind of a security conversation we could have here because there's lots of teams and people trying to do this very thing. And of course, I say we, that is because once again, I'm joined by Kris, our editor-in-chief here at K15T. Kris, it's great to have you on the stream.
Thank you, Matt.
Kris and I think the other day we determined that we are professionals at tinkering and trying to break things. We are not security professionals. But you know who is? We are also joined by, Victor, who has moved. Victor the bunny, 1 second. Okay, there's Victor. Victor under my sofa. Yeah, Victor is here. He has done a full security audit on everything Kris and I are going to talk about here today. Ada, we would never forget the rabbit, of course. He's like an essential part of learning about Confluence. Hi, Kathera. Great to have you in the chat. Okay, so let's get into it. Y'all, there are tons of ways to share content from Confluence. And actually, part of the reason we wanted to talk about this is because there is a way you used to be able to share stuff from Confluence in Confluence data center days that many believe was completely lost. But as it turns out, that particular option is enabled by K15T's app, Scroll Sites. So we're going to show lots of Confluence-y things here today, and we will show our app, Scroll Sites, if you are one of those teams that wants to be able to do that unique thing. But it's not all about sites because there's just so much more we could talk about. So first of all, Kris, do you have any sort of preface to all the things, or should we just start talking about public links right off the bat?
Yeah, let's start. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So Kris, do you want to like briefly explain what are public links? And while Kris does this, I'm going to enable public links as an administrator.
Okay, so essentially public links is a feature in Confluence that allows you to share a single page with everybody on the internet. So you go to the interface of Confluence for a selected page, you click the sharing option, and then you can share that page with a link. Obviously, what Matt is doing right now is enabling, I believe, public links on the site level,
Yep.
and or space level. And now, yeah, click share. The link will appear, and then you can share with everybody on the internet. And everybody really means everybody. So whoever gets hold of that link will be able to access your content, which brings us to potentially serious security issue that if that links falls into wrong hands, they will be able to access that information, and you won't be able to track who actually accessed that. Now, public links are great for one-off sharing of a single page, but I've dealt with cases, especially on the Atlassian community, where people complain about, okay, so I enable public link on every single page in my space, and when people click a link, they won't into the different page, they won't be able to see that content because the link doesn't work, and the links, all links send them to the Confluence. Well, that's the nature of public links. It's a one page at a time. So that sharing of multiple pages that you want to present as a coherent content, that won't work. Public links are not the feature that you're looking for. And
Right.
there's another limitation when it comes to actual content on a page, because if you have third-party macros or content from a different page through excerpts or different space, it will not be displayed.
Yeah, which is actually happening right here. You can see at the
Yeah.
top of this page, there's a macro here, and it is just not looking great. Additionally, you're going to have just massive ads for Confluence. Like, it can be great for something very one-off, but like in this situation, if I were to share this with a client as an example, it's like they might immediately be like, what is Confluence? Like, I thought this came from good software, right? What is this? There's another like powered by Confluence thing here. And yes, I showed here, if you have access to the space settings, which I do here, you can at least, both space admins and site admins can come here to public links, and you can see a list of all the public links. You can turn it off. You can also, Kris, I thought of you when I saw this. You can actually prevent other people from enabling public access here, which Kris, I feel like you actually have a story for that. And of course, you can turn it off for the whole space. So even though your admin has enabled the ability to do it, right, you might say, hey, this whole space, like, no, just solid no.
Yeah, I do have a story. So back in my admin days, I would get notification every time somebody created a public link. And in one such a case, notification came in, I look up the page, and most of the time it was perfectly fine. Not this time, because the page contained information about a client, like technical details, but still nothing that you want to share in a public link. So I disabled the public link on a page, and I pinged the person over Slack. I explained the situation and hope that that's it. It wasn't, because the person went and created the public link again. And this back and forth went on for a couple of times, and at which point I just had to disable that person's access to the page and notify our IT security to talk to the person, because obviously me being an org admin wasn't enough of an authority to instill some sense of discipline into that particular user. But the point of this is that you may have policies, you may have best practices, and you may have admins constantly on alert. But essentially what's happening is that discretion to create or to make some information public is on a single user. So again, thread carefully, because human error might expose sensitive information to anybody who gets hold of that link.
Yeah. Yeah. And even like in the UI here. So like if I come into the share menu, I see here that public link is on, but like there's no designation on this page at all. And then also like even if I come in and edit it and say like, I don't know that I need to make a change here. I guess we will. Why not? I will update this. No, seriously, do it. What's that? Mm-hmm. Oh, there we go. Okay, there we go. Yeah, it just says updated. It was just updated in the space. There's no indication that this just went out to an audience. So
there is one, but it's
okay.
It's tiny, and you really need to like be looking for it. There is an icon of a globe next to share, and that changes, but it's very subtle and.
My.
Yes, well, but your point stands. It's basically it's so subtle that you must be really looking for that to actually realize that it's a screen furniture, and I mean it's easy to miss unless you're looking for it.
Wow, I never. Kris, I think that's the first time I have seen it. And the fact that I get like with the hover over, it says that is fascinating. One, one other just sort of usability thing that I wanted to mention. This isn't really about security, but like beyond, of course, the broken macro. This reads quite well. And actually, this is encouraging. So you can see here, this is an element that there isn't permissions to view. So this might be like this is probably an inclusion of content from another place. So that's nice to see that the permission model is respected here. And you need to make sure that everybody who's sharing pages understand that. So if you've dropped in a smart link from another tool that's only internal, or a macro that is accessing content from another system, you will not know. It will not tell you, hey, by the way, your users will not see that thing. So anybody sharing has to be aware of that. Additionally, have a look here. There's no navigation. I can't see any other, navigate to any other pages that might be public pages. And if you click a link, these links, they're going to try to take you right into Confluence. So it doesn't get rid of the links. It doesn't, these are just real links into your Confluence still. So just user experience wise, again, maybe if you have security incidents, you can be sharing it this way, but just from an information leak perspective, this is really risky. Just think of the new team member who comes on your team who maybe they don't maybe they're like me, who don't know that the little globe icon actually means that it's a public page, or that it has public access on. Would never have guessed that, right? So public
That
pages.
actually, sorry, that actually happened. I had people on the team who didn't know that public link means public. They thought it's within the company only. So again, highlighting the risk that people's understanding of what a feature actually does when it's enabled might be limited. They're not the admin. They might not have the knowledge of Confluence that you have, and that creates the risk because they don't know what they're doing.
And that's assuming that I know what I'm doing. By the way, I keep trying to add Victor here and there. Victor, as every security professional, he's just constantly moving, so can't catch him very much. But Victor says, be careful with public links. The nice thing is, at least, we can see very clearly privacy is respected fairly well. Just kind of user experience and other things suffer. And then, of course, that risk of unintentional data leak, that's the biggest concern with public links. Okay, so Kris, we have another option available to us. We mentioned this a little bit in our guests live stream, and Kris, I think we were quite kind and reserved, and I think we will continue to be, but there is a classic additional method for sharing content, and I would love it if you would describe for people what anonymous access is and what that means.
Okay, I'll try. Anonymous access, also known as AA. Any resemblance to that other acronym meaning is purely coincidental. Anonymous access it's exactly what it says on the tin. You allow anonymous users to access your Confluence space, and that's available through settings in specific spaces that you might want to share. But again, it can be disabled and enabled on a site level.
Right.
Anyway, you have a content that you want to share with your, let's say, customers. Typical use cases, documentation. Many Atlassian marketplace partners are using just this feature to make their documentation public, and there's nothing wrong with that. But again, you need to be aware of potential risks and take countermeasures to ensure that you remain compliant with legislation, and then don't accidentally share information that you don't want to share. But again, it's a useful feature, and it's the quickest option how to make your content accessible to people who do not have seat on your Confluence site?
It is anonymous access has been around for Confluence and Jira for quite some time. I think potentially, if they could go back, I think Atlassian might name it something else. By the way, everybody, I'm going to share a link to our Confluence page here in the chat. This is no. Trying to spell. There we go. Whew. So this is really like fascinating. This used to be the way to do things, and I'm just going to test it here. This is an anonymous browser here. Here we are. I'm going to accept the cookies, but here we are. We are looking at the entire Confluence space, and just to make sure everybody saw how that setup went. So I enabled it as an administrator of the whole site, so you can either enable it or disable it on a site level. So if any InfoSec pros, don't panic. This is disabled by default. When you enable it, you can allow people to use Confluence and additionally allow them to view user profiles. So that's the profile, the Atlassian user profile. So I've enabled that here as my admin, and then from the perspective of my space admin here, I enabled anonymous access. I enabled anonymous access, and then additionally, there is a in the users section of the space settings, you can control what role anonymous users have. So currently it's set to view only, so they're just viewing stuff. But you can enable them to be full-on viewers. So that means they can view and comment, or they can be full-on collaborators. So, Kris, what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on anonymous access here?
Well, it does work as a documentation site. That's perfectly fine. And I used it, for example, when I was kind of leading my son's public transport club at his school. So it was the fastest way how to get information about what we're doing out to the public, so parents can view whatever we were trying to accomplish within that club. But yeah, I was quite surprised to see what is on display there. So Matt, if you can share the screen again, we can walk through what's available. So obviously pages, content, that's fine, but you can see users' names, for example, and not only that, you would see owners and collaborators. And if we go to the page history, which is also available, version history, this is a really this has potential to cause issues. First of all, I've seen public spaces that show names of people who long left that specific company, which might be a GDPR issue, for example. If you're not from Europe, GDPR is the privacy legislation that provides guidelines, or basically legislates what companies can display, how long they can keep information on specific users, that sort of thing. And what is happening in the anonymous view in terms of page history is that you can see all published or saved versions of that page. So imagine that you're working on documentation, you get your subject matter expert, or you get your information, you put it in there, and usually it's that body of information that you need to go through and decide what you want to put into the article and what shouldn't appear in the article. So at certain level, like whatever you share publicly is a distilled version of what you shouldn't make available. And the problem is that you're working on a draft and you save it, or you publish the page in Confluence. The moment you do that, unless you have really sophisticated workflow app, you are saving that version, and it's becoming the part of the page history. So whoever can actually look into that page history and see the draft with information, with data that he didn't want to make available. So this is one of the risks. Second, and this is kind of the territory of social engineering being used for to gain access. But just imagine that somebody gets access to the whole page history, and they send you an email impersonating your colleague and say, "Hi Frank, so I saw that you changed that from version 22 to something else in version 24," and essentially you give they would have a plausible story to fool you into doing what they want you to do. Again, it's a potential risk, but you're kind of opening the door and you're giving them more ammunition to gain access to your infrastructure, so to speak.
Exactly. And some other things to note here. So looking at this version history, let me see one here. Anytime you submit or, publish a page change, I don't, of course, I can't find an example now. Anytime you publish a page change, you can add a note to that. And some teams do that. When you hit the publish button, well, the one that's up here, there's a little drop-down menu and you can publish it with a comment. All of those comments go here. So if you're using, internal code names, if you are, anything, all of those comments are visible here. In addition, Kris, I just saw this so this is my anonymous access. I'm afraid everybody in the chat is going to be messing with this right now. We're going to find out. I see right here the ability to restore a past version. I don't want to click this, but can people with anonymous view access restore old versions of a page?
No, maybe you have. Well, I have a version of my private page that has anonymous in a space that has anonymous access available, and I don't see that. I can compare, I can copy a link, but maybe you have something cached in there. I cannot do that.
Okay.
In my environment. So
okay, excellent. It could also be that, as I mentioned, I have a role assigned here. Perhaps this role allows for that. So you could also work with your administrator to create a custom role that's even more locked down. Additionally, if you are using Atlassian Guard no, I think just Atlassian Guard. I don't think you need Atlassian Guard Premium. There are some additional lockdown points, but not all of them. And then also the other thing to be aware of, and Kris and I were kind of going back and forth on this, additionally, the comments that are made, while they are not visible, they are definitely present. They're definitely here. So users are seeing these things, and very, very sort of strangely. I haven't given my users the ability to comment, but they can. They see the menus. They see that something is highlighted as if it were commented. So some odd things additionally here, there's access to the space menu. They're only going to see spaces that are anonymously accessible. But if you had, another team that has shared another space that might be confusing, they're going to see that here. There's just, and then again, I come back to user experience. This is you are looking at Confluence, right? So again, if I work at Good Software and I share this with my customer, they're going to say what is Confluence? What is that? I mean, we can customize the logo, but there's just so much about this, even including the URL, where as a user, I would just be huh? So, and then Kris, what's the biggest security risk do you think with anonymous access? What, other than it sounds kind of we're nitpicking, but bigger picture, what do you think is the biggest risk for an enterprise using this strategy for sharing?
I think there's the same body of potential risks apply as it does with public links. In my previous job, anonymous access was basically disabled because of potential risks associated with that. But to me, it's really a combination of all these issues that we described, and also you're exposing your site address, your space, page IDs, and everything else that comes with Confluence. Also, from the going back to the user friendliness, if you have any apps installed, they might be visible. So, for example, in the space that I have, I can see our among apps, I can see our scroll exporters, but none of them works. And as a user, I would think that like something's wrong with the site, although it's just basically something that got leaked from the actual space into anonymous access as a UI element, but not as a functional feature.
Yes. Yeah. Also, again, I'm hoping this is just how roles are configured for me, but I'm able to view the team calendar in the space. So if you have connected your calendars, also, I think the Explore More Apps option will always be here. So, like, not that I think they could purchase. Okay, so you do have to log in to do that. I was going to say, can I go, ask the admin at Good Software to purchase an app for me? If so, I would ask for a K15T app. No, just kidding. But actually, yeah. Additionally, Kris, our colleague, I think you were also in that Barcamp session. Our colleague David was showing how with I think he was using ChatGPT. You could very quickly ask ChatGPT to write a JavaScript script to automate all manner of things. He was showing us how he's using his powers for good and how he was using that to populate a test Confluence space with a bunch of pages. But, give someone an inch, they're going to take a mile. And now anybody who has an LLM-based tool who might want to do anything they have access to, they could so quickly scrape your site for any user information. If you give them any access to create or modify things, they could create a script that would, go and revert all your, if I had my roles misconfigured, they could write a script that would go through every page in the space and revert everything to version 1.
Speaking of, so that happened on a server, but it's the same risk on any hosting or any Confluence option. So when you are selecting or specifying what anonymous users can do, you are one misclick away from giving them more rights than possible. And Matt, if you can share that link to the community question, where essentially by mistake an admin allowed anonymous users to create pages. And what followed was that spammers created 2,000 pages, and bots created 700,000 over 700,000 drafts. So it's not something that is easily dealt with. Their database size went to hundreds of gigabytes. You can see the details in the link. But it's a really scary moment. And again, it goes down to like a single misclick that resulted in something that basically required a disaster recovery, because they had to deal with a database that was so inflated that it would just keep falling on them. So again, if you are using anonymous access, just make sure that whatever you do in the background, your policies, your best practices is aligned with that specific use case, because the risks are real. And again, you are one click away from really a disaster, and it doesn't matter if you're using DC or cloud.
Absolutely. And our security professional, oh my God, he agrees completely. Victor hasn't had any hacks based on anonymous access, but he worries about it constantly, as you can tell. So one of the things, and I did want to mention Kythera in the chat, they have been using anonymous access to share their technical portfolio from their personal Confluence site. I think that's a great use for it, especially in an instance where the user and the admin are one. Kythera understands the premise of that page and understands like that all those versions and things are available. the thought of the bunny cam is currently being thrown around by Victor. The thought of an enterprise rolling out anonymous access, that is next level stuff. So speaking of next levels, let's shift a little bit to another important thing that some enterprises want to do when it comes to sharing. So we've talked about public links and anonymous access, two methods for sharing Confluence content externally, right? So making it available to the public internet. But what if you want to make your content accessible only to specific users? So either like not just available to everybody online, and even like available behind a password, or sort of like at least like security through obscurity style options for getting people in to view your content, or even to, in the case of guests, collaborate on your content. So, Kris, would you mind introducing the concept of guests? And while you do that, I'm going to do a couple of things because I just can't not multitask. So first of all, I'm going to I'm going to set up a scroll site for this Confluence space. And I'm doing that now so we can look at it in a minute. And I will just share a link to that site so that when we get there, we will get there. All right, so Kris, talk to me a little bit about guests. We already talked about this a bit. What are guests? How are they different from public links or anonymous access? When would we use these?
Well, in essence, guests are users without a properly licensed Confluence seat, which is absolutely great because essentially, if Confluence being built for collaboration, you sometimes need to collaborate with somebody who is not within your organization, and it might not be plausible or easy from your licensing and security perspective to give them a full seat. So you just invite somebody who is not within your company, your organization, invite them as a guest. You assign a specific space for them, and they do not count towards your Confluence license. So again, it's perfect for one-off collaborations and guests, because guests can really have pretty much any privilege or any permission as a regular user, except for space administration and maybe export. I'm not sure, but it's really perfect. And before I joined K15T, I was invited as a guest to one of the projects, and it worked perfectly. I used guests in the past as an admin for collaboration as well. So it's a really useful feature. It may not be great for allowing controlled access to your content on a mass scale. Well, first of all, you're limited by 5 guests per paid user, and then on the other hand, you're limited by the actual user limit on the Confluence side, which is 20. How much is it? 250,000, right?
Yes, I think so now.
Yeah.
As of time of this publishing.
Yes. And again, it might be difficult to manage these people if you provision them through your SAML SSO. They do count towards your Atlassian Guard license, something I found recently.
Fascinating. Okay.
Yeah. So again, it requires a lot of user administration, and it doesn't matter that they're not paid users. It is still a burden.
Absolutely. Just a note for those who are curious, guest access is also newly available in Jira. Same limitation. So you can only add guests to a single space in Jira and in Confluence. And specifically in Confluence, you cannot mention anyone, even if they're in the space. There are only certain things you can do, like you can't export all the content, and you can't do things like browse spaces and stuff. Much of that makes sense. So this can be a good tool for working with people inside your enterprise, inside your organization or outside of your organization, where it's like there's a single project we're working on. So you just need singular access to one piece of or one area of content, or one Jira space. Where it starts to break down is situations where you need to share like more internally or externally. And then, like you said, Kris, there is that user limit. So if your organization is paying for 10,000 Confluence licenses, you only get 50,000 guests potentially. So if your organization is 200,000 people and you want to scale that practice, that's not really going to pan out well. And then we also talked a little bit during the live stream about the headache of administering that as well, which can be kind of a headache. I did want to show, just so everybody can see, this is what it looks like for admins to turn on guests. I'm sure this isn't too different. Really interesting. In the admin settings, it's not in the security menu. It's in the permissions menu. So then you go into permissions, and then you can invite guests. So your site admin has to add them as users. They're guest users, but they still are users in Atlassian. And then from there, you can add them to your space admins can add them to the space and decide what role they have. One thing that was interesting that was brought up during the live stream is some people have encountered issues where they invite guests who already have an Atlassian account set up with that same email. Some people were having issues accessing a specific site as guests. Not really sure what was happening there, but they ended up saying they were going to just contact Atlassian support there, but that could potentially be an issue. The great thing here is, though, this does fit much more nicely in the security model, at least. That said, Kris, what would you say? What are the security risks here? Because this isn't without security risk.
I guess it only the biggest security risk is that you forget that you have guests in a space, and then you maybe repurpose the space or add additional information. I mean, think about it. You're working on a customer success story with your customer, and you have a dedicated space for that. So you're working with a customer A. You have guests there from a customer A staff. And then this project is done, and you start working on a customer B success story and invite people from that other customer. So suddenly you have people from customer A who can access whatever you're working on with customer B, because you didn't provision those customer A users out of the space. So this is basically just like a guest hygiene that you need to keep an eye on. But other than that, if you follow these basic rules of engagement with guests, you should be fine. But again, if guests shouldn't overstay their welcome. I mean, as Benjamin Franklin said, fish and guests have two things one thing in common, that they start stink after 3 days, something to that effect. So yeah. Just make sure that when a guest doesn't need access anymore, just provision them out of your Confluence.
Yes. And speaking of stinking, before we look at scroll sites as kind of another option here, I wanted to just mention or just kind of like draw everybody's attention to the fact that currently I am in this space. I have enabled public links in this space. I've also enabled anonymous access in this space, and I could add guest users to this space. The question is, should I do that, Kris?
Well, if you need a guest to collaborate on specific features, then yes, it's an option, but it's just like it can be inconvenient for a user who is not really tech savvy, because imagine that one day you have access as a guest, and for whatever reason you restart your browser, clear cache, and that login information is gone. So that your guest would go to the link as per usual, and they wouldn't be able to see the edit option, for example. And again, if that person is not really familiar with how Confluence works or what exactly is the role, it can be confusing. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not a disaster for anyone. It's being done. It's just like it may be it may be inconvenient for guests essentially. But
Yeah.
I mean, other than that, it's okay.
It's okay. Just shared a very important link in the chat related to that. Yeah, I think it's mostly confusing to users because if you have a public link, that's a whole separate link and different experience to a single page in the space. And then yeah, if I go to the page, it's like, am I logged in? Am I not logged in? I can see the pages either way. I have different options, and if you do have a guest user but you haven't logged in, there's nothing in the UI that's going to prompt you to say, "Hey, you can log in to get your guest permissions, your guest role access." So for the most part, I would say, can we officially say, Kris, that the official recommendation of the K15T crew is don't use both of them together? Or don't use anonymous access and public links together, but like also with guests, like just be careful, tread lightly.
I think exercising caution would be the best policy. I mean, if you know exactly what you're doing and you keep adhere to all the best practices surrounding both anonymous access and guests, you'd be fine. Just be sure that you don't forget to do what you need to do with guests once the project ends.
Yeah. And Victor also thinks that is a wise security practice. He has never forgotten to clean things up, but also he's incredibly careful with how he uses anonymous access, guest access, and public links. And speaking of, I am not going to forget, and I am going to turn off anonymous access in this space, and I'm going to turn off public links in this space. And I didn't invite any guests. So we have locked this space down. But now we get to talk about the final approach to sharing stuff today, which is scroll sites. So I have created a site. So went into the Scroll Sites app, as you saw, and just hit the Create Site button and selected the space and made a site. I haven't done anything with it. But I have my link. I could see that it's public. And if we go to it, I've dropped that in the chat also. Here is a fully accessible site. This is all of the content that was in the space. Also, you might notice no broken macros anywhere. I love that for us. I love that for our users also. So like same content. This is an actual site. You can see that it's like pulling the info from the space. I can customize all of this, right? So I can like give it some branding. I can put in like a background image here. So like it's a proper site. I can even, if we have the OpenAI tokens to spare, we can have AI powered search and chat right here in the search box. So we have a proper site. And by the way, you can have a custom domain on one of these sites if you like, which is pretty cool. But this is great if I want to share things publicly, and we've talked about that with anonymous access and public links. But what if I want to share this with only a subset of my clients or customers? Or what if I even want to just have information from Confluence that I share internally within my enterprise? From what I understand, Kris, that is something you used to be able to do with Data Center.
Yes. Before I get to that, just like I need to emphasize one thing because to me that was the coolest thing ever
Yes.
with the scroll side, like Lukma, no anonymous access. So like you can really decouple your
True.
authoring environment
True.
in Confluence from what you present to your users. It's to me that was a really great feature.
Yes,
Now,
I dare anyone in the chat to go to that scroll site and try to revert the versions of pages. You can't do it, and you're not going to find who wrote them either.
anyway, so what is still done and what we used to be done on the server, and I personally experienced that, although it didn't happen under my watch. So essentially, when you are controlling the whole environment and like you do on server, you can basically restrict access to the server itself. So what teams were doing is that they put and again, I'm not an expert on this, but basically when you try to access a public space in Confluence, first you would be presented with a login into the server or DC environment. So proxy or reverse proxy, something to that effect. Again, not an expert on that. I just know what the how it looked like. So even myself as an admin of that Confluence instance, as it used to be called, I would have to put in my credentials or password to access that space, which was fine because basically what you could do is you could restrict access to specific content to people who had the password purely on Confluence. So you didn't need any app, and you were in control who gets the password. Now, obviously, there's this whole authentication game to be played there, but it was an option. And the problem now with cloud is that it's either anonymous access or Confluence seed, basically, if you need to do something similar. Unless you are able to decouple your published content from Confluence, so you don't depend on the Atlassian accounts of your users, you don't depend on seeds, guests, and you don't need anonymous access. So by essentially putting these two together and separating them physically, you have more options what you can do with that content in Scroll Site, which is a standalone static website that you can configure as you like, including controlling access to that site. Matt, over to you.
Yes, yeah. I think this is such a really important thing for for any users who are trying to, and I'm trying to paste y'all a link so you can look at it. For those who are trying to create your content in Confluence, but then share it, like many teams for a long time, in any industry, their method for controlling content access like this is by like publishing like PDFs or Word documents. And I like a good, beautiful PDF as much as the rest of them, but like that doesn't actually control it, right? It's still anybody could do anything with that PDF. That approach is security through obscurity. I remember in the DC days reaching out to my admin and being like, hey, Ted, make it so people cannot see this. And he went in and configured things and like set things up so that like it was only available internally. But that practice, everybody kind of thought like this is lost. We don't have a way to like share Confluence content that's viewable to everybody within the enterprise, but not outside of it. So I just popped a link in the chat. Within Scroll Sites, I'm going to go back to the setup area. I am but a layman. I'm going to come in and edit the site, and there is a section called Site Access. I'm gonna, domain and security. I'm going to go right in here, and you can see right now it's a public site, bully for us, but I can protect the site. So I'm going to turn on token access. You're about to change the site settings for this site from public to protected. This immediately affects everybody. Sorry, everybody, if you're reading that content, it's gone. All right, I've protected it. And so now I can add a token. So here, I'm going to add a token. And that is a very secure token, but I'm going to make a very insecure one for everybody in the chat. So I'm going to create the token Victor, and I'm going to add a description. You definitely should do this if you have different passwords for maybe you are giving different passwords to different parts of the organization or to different clients. Make sure you add a description here. I'm not sharing my screen. Y'all, thank you for keeping me honest here. I have described most of the process. Here I am. I've created a token. I'm going to hit save here. Here's my token. See, this is why, again, you need to add a description. You can copy it. So I'm going to copy it and drop it in the chat so y'all can see it. Go ahead and refresh that page. And I'm going to do that right now. Where did I put my website? Here we go. Here's my scroll site. I'm going to refresh this. Oh, snap. So this is the name of the site. That's why it says sharing. And now it says I need to provide a token. So now if I can type, I've typed in Victor, I'm hitting sign in, and now I have full access to the site. So very quickly, without having to bother my admin or anything, I have password protected this content, which is great. So I could distribute, I could have a Confluence space or even select parts of the content in the space. I can quickly create a site. I can quickly and easily add a password, and then I can distribute this URL and that token to folks in my organization. I would argue, Kris, that this is actually faster than the way it used to work with DC.
Well, for setup, certainly, and you can share it with your customers if you want to.
True.
If you want to like protect access to your documentation and you want to make sure that only your customers can access that, this is the easiest and the fastest way to do that. Not only that, but I can imagine a situation where you have a public site and then you have a really important or pesky client and they want their own branded site that's password protected, maybe with more information. So we can easily create a new site with their colors, their logo, and everything, and just make it available just for that client. So because you share the link and the password only with them. So I mean, this is a territory of multi-tenant documentation, basically. But you can create multiple sites from the same content, or combine two content sources, two spaces together, and again do that advanced thing and do that like really tailored or customer specific site. But if you want to bother your admin, as you said, Matt, before,
I love it. He loves it too.
You actually can go one step up and essentially protect the access to the space with your SML SSO, which again is my in previous company, which is exactly what I did, and I went with the public side and the internal side in the scroll sides. And basically, what I did was whatever is public, that's public information. People can browse that, use it for self-service, explore features. The internal version was behind SSO, and it contained internal documentation that was specific to our company. Some service manuals, additional information for specific features that support and customer success agents, services could use it within the documentation body, so they wouldn't have to use two resources for one purpose. And again, it allows you to control access to your scroll site with more advanced more advanced tools, basically with SSO. And whoever you provision into your identity provider world can get access, or you can disable access for them, because the scroll site just becomes a new asset in your identity provider setup. So if you say that this group of users have access from day one when they join company, and you add that new employee into that group, they automatically gain access. And if you are acting as your SSO provider for your customers, which often happens, then you can use the same approach to allow your customers to access that specific site, which again is something that resembles closely that original use case with DC and server. But you are totally in control, because like whoever is within your SSO scheme can access if you want them to have access. So it's more advanced feature, and you can with password, if it gets into wider circulation that you ever wanted, then it is a potential risk. So if you want to be extra secure with SSO, you know exactly who can access it. You can revoke the access at any point, and you can enforce things like what's the word, 2FA, two-form authentication.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, and
so
you have all the benefits that a SAML provider gives you, including like awareness of location. That doesn't seem like your computer that you're logging in from. I think this is particularly valuable. So like from an InfoSec perspective, right? if we're just using tokens, right? And like you said, if we realize like, hey, it seems like maybe the password has been distributed too much or something like that, right? I can come in and I can delete it, right? I can delete it, and then you need to create a new one and redistribute it. So that's like an easy off. But like you said, like truly that SAML approach is great because all of K15T's apps are, we have all the needed security certifications that y'all don't need to worry about that side of things. And then knowing that it's your single sign-on that is providing the security layer, like there's nothing to worry about, which is like a nice feeling, especially when thinking about anonymous access.
And there's another hack with SSO. So you can set up access for yourself, or you can create documentation for somebody else. So let's say that you have a customer and you create documentation for them. So what you can do is to create a new site and connect it to your customer's domain and enable their own SSO.
Ooh.
Meaning that you are still managing the content, you're still publishing, but they are in control who can access that site. So obviously they are your customers, so you would have to work together to set it up, but it is possible. So you can really create multiple sites with multiple approaches to protection, depending on whatever your client desires.
Exactly. And within your enterprise as well, once you have set up a custom domain in Scroll Sites, you can create as many sites as you like as subdomains. So you can have goodsoftware.com or how do subdomains work? Yes, goodsoftware.com / clever
your corporation,
app, right? And then I'm like, going back to networking class. So within your enterprise, you can share the content of different spaces with custom domains that actually make sense, that are easily browsed internally, that make sense. Everything from your project documentation to your HR documentation to help sites and knowledge bases of any kind, with domains that actually make sense. And while he hasn't set up a scroll site yet, I think Victor, as a security professional, he might go that way. He has to check his SAML setup right now, but join for the next live stream while he does that live for all of us. No, not really, but actually I would love to know from those in the chat. We talked about different models for sharing in Confluence and security considerations to make. That's the whole theme of this live stream. I'd love to know, would y'all be interested in hearing about this from the Jira perspective? Because there are lots of options. We talked about guest access a little bit, anonymous access in Jira. There are lots of options for sharing things from Jira. Also JSM and CSM. Don't get me started. Would y'all be interested in having an in-depth look at that? I know Victor is on board. We have a couple of Jira experts at K15T as well, and I just can't help but dive deeper and deeper into Jira because it is so complex and fascinating. If y'all would like that, let us know. We would like to do a little deep dive. Any closing thoughts, Kris? We are almost out of time.
Not really. I think we exhausted the topic. Given the time, I mean, I could talk about this for ages, but we only had one hour.
Yes.
I mean, just one other use case for this SSO. You can create your intranet site with this approach, because everybody in the company has SSO, but not necessarily everyone has access to Confluence if they don't need one. And again, something that's like another use case, which is often omitted, I would say.
Yep. The power here is really vast, and it's so nice to have this feature set for those organizations thinking about moving from, or they're in the process of moving from data center to cloud, big enterprises that have relied on that kind of hacky way, not hacky, but, more technical way to do this in the past. It does exist on cloud. You can do it. And it's not security through obscurity. You get to control the entire SSO experience and all of the data protections. Kris, thank you so much for joining us. I love having your expertise. I wish everybody could tune into all of the hilarious like Slack chats and pre-calls Kris and I have where we're just like talking about all sorts of stuff, and then we condense this into a semi-professional presentation. Thanks for joining, Kris, and trying to break things for our benefit.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Victor, for joining us. He's exhausted. We're going to let this security professional rest, and be sure to seek out your security professional and encourage them to take a nap. We do see some interest in maybe exploring this topic on the Jira side, so do like and subscribe, because we are constantly exploring many parts of the teamwork graph and the teamwork collection, as well as looking at how K15T's scroll and backbone solutions can enable your teams to share securely. So please do subscribe. Go to k15t.com/learn to see all the written content that we have out there. There is so much, including the links that are in the chat. So join us in all the ways as we continue to explore how to use the Teamwork Collection to share what you do best.